Hello, how are you? Hello, welcome to my channel. This is Noria from Spain, and I'm going to do some reactions on YouTube right now. And I'm going to start with, in today's video, it's a very classical one about geography in Indonesia. So let's watch it together. If it's the first time you are watching my channel, just please let me know that you like my content by subscribing and do some likes so I can keep doing that. So I'm just welcome everybody, and yeah, let's start watching this video together. Okay, so let's start.
Know anything about Indonesia, basically all you have to know is that it's kind of like the Hawaii of the Muslim world, but it's like huge. It's like the biggest state, and with orangutans.
Okay.
And that's it, just no punchline. Let's just go to the intro song.
Okay, that was a nice introduction.
Hey everybody, I'm your host Barbie. So as some of you know, I've been to Indonesia one time on one island for like...
Okay, I don't know this guy. It's the first time I'm watching a video of this guy. It seems like a YouTuber.
3 hours, I ate one dish, so basically I'm like the Indonesia expert, right? Well,
yeah.
If not, I'm kind of like the only guy on YouTube doing full profile videos like this, so for now, you'll just have to kind of deal with me for like the next 12 or so minutes. Woohoo! Default!
Okay, I'm YouTuber too.
Alright, so again, if you don't know anything about Indonesia, it's basically like if the Middle East and South Asia had an incredibly colorful, loud, somewhat explosive set of babies. Like thousands of them. Okay, that doesn't really help. First of all, Indonesia is the world's largest archipelago nation, located right where the Indian Ocean meets the Pacific Ocean, on the incredibly clustered set of islands, making 6 countries known commonly as Nusantara, or the Malay Archipelago. Indonesian Archipelago. Sure, whatever makes you happy. Indonesia actually has land...
Yeah, I always heard that Indonesia has like a very weird, I would not say weird, okay, but like a kind of really strange accent with different mixes.
Borders with 3 of these countries, East Timor, Papua New Guinea, and Malaysia, on the biggest island, Borneo, or Kalimantan, which is one of the world's only 2 triple split nation islands, the other one being Cyprus. Although technically if you include the UN buffer zone, it's kind of like 4 entities, but the UN isn't a country, whatever, just watch the Cyprus episode. The country is divided into 34 provinces, 5 of which have special administrative statuses, with the capital and most populous city, Jakarta, located on Java, the world's most populous island, with nearly half of the entire population of Indonesia in it. The largest cities after Jakarta are Surabaya and Bandung, both located on Java Island, and Medan, located on Sumatra. Jakarta Soekarno-Hatta International, Bali's Ngurah Rai International, and...
The only thing that I don't like about these videos, I mean, it's a really good video, very entertaining and educational, but it goes super fast, so you need to super quickly getting all the information.
Despansar and Surabaya's Juanda International. Now here's where things get a little speculative. Today, there are still arguments claimed as to exactly how many islands Indonesia has. The National Coordinating Agency for Surveying and Mapping says Indonesia has about 13,500. The National Institute of Aeronautics and Space Agency says that it has about 18,300, whereas the Indonesian government claims about 17,500. But wherever the point is, there's a lot of them. Over 8,800 have names, and over 900 of them are permanently inhabited. You would think they are the country with the most islands, but surprisingly, Finland and Canada beat them. But a lot of their islands are kind of like boop-a-doop, little islands in the lakes. So does it really count? I guess. Now let's talk about the 5 special administrative provinces. They are Aceh, Yogyakarta, West Papua and Papua, and the capital Jakarta. Now, no surprise, the capital Jakarta acts as its own political entity. Lots of countries do that. But what about the others? First, Aceh. Aceh is kind of like the black sheep of Indonesia. It's the only province in which Sharia law is fully implemented. Also, they kind of have like a ton of oil. So yeah, they've kind of asserted a very independent ideology that sets them apart as autonomous from the rest of Indonesia. Then you have Yogyakarta, which is the only region that...
There is always countries like this that they have like different parts, like one of these parts are like super independent from the others, and actually also is related to economic or business things.
It's still governed by a pre-colonial monarchy, the Sultan of Yogyakarta, who acts as a hereditary governor. Otherwise, we get the 2 Papuas, which collectively used to be the province called Irian Jaya, but then in 2003 they got split into 2. Basically, this is the place that has the least in common with the rest of Indonesia. It has a culture and background closer to their cousins across the border in Papua New Guinea. So then why is this part of Indonesia? Well, long story short, Indonesia was basically like, well, now that we have our full sovereignty, we get everything that the Dutch colonized. But the people of Papua were not too happy, so then Indonesia was like, all right, we'll give you a vote to stay or leave. However, we would strongly implore you to make the right decision.
Yeah,
so they voted to stay in. A lot of people complained. There's still some current opposition, and to this day, the area has a relatively high level of autonomy, and the government kind of just leaves them alone, except for when it comes to mining for resources. Oh, in the South Maluku area...
always like the same kind of topic. Like we give you some permissions, but generally speaking, we control all of the territory and we control all of the autonomy of the
It
region.
also kind of has like an independence dispute thing kind of going on, but the major opponents to the Indonesian government are primarily based in the Netherlands. Then you have the strange Riau Islands, which look like they should belong to Malaysia, but they don't, even though they have a strong Malay-derived culture. Then you have the Ambalat Sea Block, which has a ton of oil that both they and Malaysia argue over. So that essentially covers most of the administrative divisions of
Okay, it's the first time that I know that Indonesia has oil. I didn't know
Indonesia. Some of the most notable spots of interest in Indonesia might include the National Monument and Museum, Royal Keraton Ngayogyakarta Palace, Ratu Boko, the Magalang and chicken-shaped churches, Borobudur, disputed the largest Buddhist temple in the world, Maimum Palace, the Taman Sari Underground Mosque, the Equator Monument, the Pura Ulun Danu Bratan Lake Temples. Yeah, try to say that 5 times fast. Pura Ulun Danu Batan Lake. The Millennium Bridge, the Sacred Monkey Temple, the Hellmouth or Elephant Cave, 7-story pagoda of Cebu, the smoked mummy villages of Aikim and Jiwika in Papua. Or if you're lazy, you can just go to the Taman Mini Indonesia Indah Park, which kind of has like a bunch of replicas of all the famed sites in Indonesia. Oh, and keep in mind, there's Dutch colonial style buildings all over, too many ancient temples and pagodas to list. But no matter how many buildings and landmarks are built, they will never compare to what Mother Nature has done. Which brings us to...
Encuentra el hotel perfecto para ti en booking.com.
Indonesia's land.
Well, I guess like there is like a florist country that has like many different parts in terms of religion, culture, and language from the colonized of the Dutch people, but also from different parts of the world. So it's like as he's saying really well, like a florist country.
Land is like that one ex we all had back in our 20s that we trusted a stupid friend to hook us up with. Super attractive, but almost killed you a few times. Indonesia lies on what is labeled as the prehistoric continental shelf known as Sundaland, which during the Ice Age times pretty much connected all of the islands together before the Wallace Line until the ice melted and filled in the gaps. Now this is where things get incredibly messed up. Not only is Indonesia right in the worst part of the Ring of Fire, but the country is basically smashed between 3 converging major continental plates. The Eurasian, the Pacific, and the Australian plates, with dozens of minor plates and rifts like the Sunda, Timor, Banda, Molucca, and so on. This in return gives Indonesia over 400 volcanoes, disputably more than any in the world, with over 150 active ones, making it the most volcanically active country in the world as well. This means on a daily basis, Indonesia experiences on average about 4 earthquakes a day, ranging anywhere between...
So one of the most, in terms of 4 earthquakes a day and then a lot of volcanic interaction, that's not a really good invitation to go to Indonesia. I mean, it's always like a paradise to go, but kind of dangerous.
Between the small, timid 3 to a noticeable 6 on the Richter scale. And you never know where or when they will happen.
Oh, that's great. So you are on the beach and then suddenly you die.
As the warmer, humid climate allows moisture and minerals to coalesce, creating some of the most fertile land on the planet. This is why places like Hawaii and Iceland are so radically different despite both being volcanic islands. In the end, Indonesia got blessed with a flourishing abundance of flora and fauna, the second highest concentration in the world after Brazil, many of which being endemic species like the Rafflesia arnoldi and the Titan arum, the largest flowers in the world, which each smell like rotting corpses. And at over 180, they also have the highest concentration of mammals out of anywhere in the world. Nonetheless, the national animal is actually a reptile, the largest in the world at 3 meters long, the famous Komodo dragon, which you can find a bunch of on Komodo Island, which is where they get their name from, and they can kill people. Just a heads up. And the surprisingly not national animal, even though everybody knows and loves.
Sorry, I'm not happy because this Komodo dragon wants to kill people, but I knew that that animal, like one of the super unnatural, we can say, like animals in the world, which is like if you go to the prehistory with the dinosaurs, if you go back to the dinosaurs' time. So that's quite adventurous.
Loves them. The only great ape in Asia, orangutans, are only found on this archipelago as well. By the way, they look docile and quiet, but orangutans can rip off your arm if you anger them. So don't. Otherwise, the largest mountain, Puncak Jaya, is located in the east in Papua. The longest river, the Kapuas, flows on Kalimantan, or Borneo Island, starting in the east, emptying into the South China Sea. The largest lake, as well as the largest volcanic lake in the world, Lake Toba, can be found on Sumatra. This is also the site of the largest speculated volcanic explosive eruption on Earth that essentially created a worldwide volcanic winter. The eruption was so big that you can literally observe ashes from the explosion that went as far as Malawi in East Africa. Remember, guys, Mother Nature is beautiful, but if she wants, she can can kill you. Close to Puncak Jaya is Grasberg, the largest gold and copper mine in the world. And on Mount Ijen on Java, which spews out blue lava, all over you can find intrepid sulfur miners that literally go into the base of the volcanic craters, risking health just to get raw sulfur ores. Otherwise, you have other anomalies like the Sidoarjo mud volcanoes, the three-colored Lake Kelimutu in Flores, and the Kakaban Island jellyfish lake. Too many strange places. To this day, Indonesia is the #1 producer of palm oil, cloves, cinnamon, nutmeg, coconut, and vanilla. Some national dishes might include things like rendang, satay, gado-gado, lontong, ketupat, papeda, ikan bakar, pempek, tumpeng, lemang. The national dish, nasi goreng, which basically just means fried rice, which has no exact recipe. You can mix it up and kind of do whatever you want to it. Oh, and keep in mind, Malay.
Well, I'm going to stop for a minute. This kind of diet is like very similar to any kind of, it's like a mix, as I say, like a mix or Indian, Malaysia, also Asian culture, Asian gastronomy culture. So it's a combination, like it tastes, I don't know, but it seems like really, really good to try and taste and very healthy.
Asia might argue that some of these dishes belong to them, but that's a whole other story tied in with history and culture. We got time. Why not talk about it? Now, there's a lot of curious mysteries when it comes to Indonesia's people. Like, how did they become predominantly Muslim? Or what's the whole deal with them in Malaysia? Or wait, this guy is considered an Indonesian? What? First of all, the country has about 263 million people, making it the 4th most populous country in the world, with the largest population of Muslims as well. Now, here's the thing. In a sense, yes, 95% of the population is considered native Indonesian. But that's an incredibly broad term, considering that Indonesia has about 300 different ethno-linguistic groups.
What? Oh my god, 300 ethnic groups. That's a lot for a region, and it's not really, well, he didn't say how big it is. I don't know exactly, but that's a lot of ethnic groups. Like, wow, this country is very, very rich.
Split up across all the island regions of the country. If you look at a map with the actual ethnic group breakdown, it kind of looks something like this. Nonetheless, the 2 largest parent ethnic groups are the Javanese that make up about 40%, the Sundanese that make up about 15%. Otherwise, the rest of the population is primarily made up of smaller groups and tribes that have only around 2 to 3% each, like the Batak, the Sulawesi, the Balinese, Minangkabau, the Tawi, Papuan, Dayak, and so on. Finally, about 5% are non-indigenous Indonesians like Chinese, Arabs, Indians, and even a few Europeans. They also use the Indonesian rupiah as their currency, they use the Type-C plug outlet, and they drive on the left side of the road. And here's where things get a little confusing. Culture and language. The one thing that kind of unites all Indonesians is that they share the national language Bahasa Indonesia, which means the Indonesian language. However, Bahasa Indonesia is actually kind of like a lingua franca to many of the people, as Indonesia is the world's largest trilingual country. In addition to Bahasa Indonesia, most people speak their own mother tongue as well as English. Yep, English. They caught on quick when they realized it was the money language. The funny thing is, even though the Javanese make up the largest people group, the Javanese language is not an official language. Technically, it could have been, but then that would have favored one people group over all the others, which would have caused tension, so they kind of had to choose like a neutral default. Plus, Javanese is like really hard to learn, and the original writing system, although very beautiful, is incredibly difficult to write. Nonetheless, at near
Well, that was like an Asian script, or an Asian, not Asian, like in the past, writing style. It might be like super hard to learn. Actually, I learned to learn to speak Chinese and to learn and to write Chinese, so I can imagine the Japanese language. It should be like maybe kind of similar.
Nearly 100 million speakers, this makes Javanese the largest non-official minority language in the world. And that's why the Bahasa Indonesia language is so strange. It's not even technically indigenous to Indonesia, but more Malay-derived. To this day, people who speak Bahasa Indonesia can understand somewhere around 60 to 70% of what their neighbors are saying in Malaysia. The biggest difference, though, would be the loan words, as Indonesia took quite a bit of influence from the Dutch back in colonial times. For example, kantor versus kantor, doctor versus dokter, mantel, mantel, oma, opa, wortel, wortel. Speaking of the Dutch, quick history lesson. Hindu kingdoms, Buddhist kingdoms is...
Well, before she goes to the religion thing, I think it's quite similar. I mean, there is some similarities in terms of pronunciation. I can see not really like a huge difference.
Islamic kingdoms, the Portuguese come in quickly, but then the Dutch flock in. Japan comes in for a couple of years and decimates a huge chunk of the population. Independence, Republic, the Suharto years.
Controversial incidents and fights with ethnic Chinese, Timorese, and Papuan peoples. Suharto falls, Reformation period begins, and here we are today.
In Indonesia, all citizens are required to register under one of 6 recognized religion categories: Islam, Protestant, Catholic, Hindu, Buddhist, and Confucianism. If you don't identify with either, then Sorry. Prior to Islam entering around the 13th century, Indonesia
to
was
other
actually
place.
primarily Hindu and Buddhist. It's disputed on how exactly Indonesia became prevalently Muslim. Some people will say that it's
Yeah.
because of the Arab traders that came by in the early first millennium. Others will say that maybe it had to do with the Malacca Sultanate conquest that
El
fought against the
Sultanato
Hindu and
Malaco.
Buddhist kingdoms. And the truth is, both might be right. Inevitably, Bali became like the last sort of haven for whatever Hindus were left. The eastern Nusa Tenggara region and
Okay.
the Papuas remained predominantly Christian as the Dutch and Portuguese shared the gospel. Islamic culture in Indonesia is a little different from what it looks like in the Middle East. For one, most mosques don't have the typical dome structure, and actually many of them resemble Hindu temples, like the Demak Great
Yeah.
Mosque. When a family member dies, their relatives might often come together and pray for a whole week, and then again on the 40th day, and then on the year anniversary, and then on the 500th day, and so on.
Okay, I'm gonna stop. Well, that was a kind of really multicultural and religious place. Like you can see many different religions. The good thing about this, when you are like from somewhere else and you go, move on to one new country, new place, that you can reflect yourself immediately on this place because you have the language adapted, you have probably the religion itself in that place, so you can like adapt very quickly. So I don't think it's a kind of handicap, so completely the opposite.
Also, the night before Eid al-Fitr, the youth might gather and go around neighborhoods reciting the takbir. Those are some things you don't really typically find in the Middle East. Clothing modesty customs are pretty loose. Not all Muslim women wear hijabs, however, the ones that do might also complement it with Western clothing, like branded t-shirts with skin-tight sleeves and jeans. When I was in Indonesia, I saw a hijab-wearing woman with short sleeves and capri pants exposing her calves. I was like, can they do that? Now,
Of course they can, and there are many other countries that they can, like, you can see the woman wearing the hijab, and also dressing like a Western, okay, we'll say that like that, Western woman. So it's really common, and also in Malaysia, I think, some parts in India. So there are many countries that women dress like that. I don't know why he's so surprised. Maybe he doesn't know.
Now, in terms of culture, again, it depends on where you are, and many indigenous peoples still follow ancient traditions. Everything from the Minangkabau candle dance to the gamelan players of Yogyakarta,
That's
Wayang
beautiful.
Javanese shadow puppetry, Balinese festivals, Sumatran pencak silat martial art
Wow.
tournaments, Kenya motif paintings of the Kalimantan
I like
tribes,
that
the
so
deadly
much.
pasola game played by Sumba peoples, Karbeng cow racing on Madura Island, the strange burial traditions of the Toraja people,
well, I
and
don't-
everywhere you can find those pointy longhouses. Otherwise,
like
some
that
notable
part so
people of
much.
Indonesian descent might include people like the first president Sukarno, Gada Maja, R.A. Kartini, B.J. Habibie, Iko Uwais, Yayan Ruhian,
Habibie.
Sisip Arif Rahman, Agnes Monica, Iwan Faz, Anggun, Megawati Sukarno Putri, the Hartono brothers, and YouTubers Brian Emanuel and Raditya Dika. Now, it's so hard to
I love that he's missing the YouTubers with a lot of academic or maybe philosophers, activists in Indonesia. Like right now, the YouTuber is at the same level as any kind of academic person.
cover Indonesia's culture because there's so many different people groups, each with their own cultures. It's insanely colorful and rich. I wish we could cover more, but we
Yeah,
gotta move on to
completely.
some diplomatics, shall we?
Descubre miles de artículos únicos
Okay.
en Vinted. Ahorra dinero extra, consigue un toque extra.
Estoy buscando solo a 10 personas que quieran aprender más.
Okay, guys, I think the video is finished. Well, just before, that was a really interesting video to watch. Knowing right now much more about Indonesia, I can say like it's a really wonderful and colorful country with a lot of multicultural or intercultural interactions. So you can, as I say, you can reflect yourself very much when you go there. And really interesting place to learn about the world, because when you are in a territory or in a region, in a state that is completely different to yours in terms of cultural thing, religion, language, like probably you learn faster than in other places. And just Indonesia reminds me to any other, I would not say it's the same, okay, but it reminds me to other kind of places in Asia, very like the style. Yeah, thank you for this information. I hope you like this video, guys, and we'll see you soon in another video. Bye bye. If you like it, please subscribe and give some comments below. Thank you. Bye.